So we're here to introduce to you our new personal training program. It's called One Car, One Driver, and we have Nicholas Chapman here to help explain it to us. So Nick has actually been in the fitness industry for over 20 years. He's coached, trained over 1,000 fat loss clients in his time and helped mentor over 300 trainers. Nick's also owned 3 fitness businesses over the years, so he's the man behind our One Car, One Driver program, and Nick's role at Tribe is coaching and mentoring all of our Tribe trainers to deliver this program to you guys. How are you, Nicholas?
I'm super excited to be delivering this program, Mark.
Excellent. So let's get straight into it. We're here to explain the One Car, One Driver program. Yeah, why are we doing it? What's it all about?
So without getting right into the weeds, it's just about long, sustainable change. Obviously, fat loss is the primary goal of the program, but if you're someone who really likes quick results and then actually falling off the wagon at the end of that and going back to where you were, this is not for you. This is for someone who's looking to go long-term success with their health and fitness and body composition.
Love it. Excellent. And then the name, One Car, One Driver, you got a bit of an analogy behind that. You want to talk us through that?
Yeah, essentially like it's a representation of yourself. So one car, the car is your physical self, your body and all the habits that you have. The driver is your mental state, okay? And the mental state obviously drives the physical state. So one car, one driver is a cool analogy too, because you only get one car and one driver for your whole life, so you better look after it.
Love that. Excellent. And then as far as like the coach, the trainer's concerned, they're the pit stop dude?
Yeah, so your coach is the little guy with the microphone feeding into your helmet, talking to you as you're driving the car and on the path towards your results.
Love it. So guys, as part of this program, there are 4 phases, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's talk about phase 1, in the shed. So what's that all about?
So phase 1, in the shed. So just to use the little analogy, essentially your car and your driver, we park them in the shed and we have a look at them and their history for their last 20, 30, 40, 50 years of training.
However old the human is.
However old the human is. And so that's in the shed part. It's a couple of things. The first thing is we need to know what your goals are. So where you want this car and driver to end up. So we've got a little section there to fill out. And then we want to understand the health status of both your car and driver, and what we do is we review your habits that have contributed to your current health state.
And then when we say habits, it's like 3 areas. So what are they?
So they're training, nutrition, and mindset self-care.
Okay. So we're in phase 1. The trainer and the client are reviewing habits.
Yep.
So what type of habits are we reviewing when it comes to training?
So essentially, like it's everything to do with their training consistency, what type of training they do, step volume, all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. And then same with nutrition, same with mindset. So the reason we do this is to really just help the client and the coach understand more about the client in regards to those 3 areas.
Yeah.
And this is what the client does themselves as well. Like this is almost homework for them. They're actually doing this review themselves. If they're struggling to sort of maybe come up with ideas or answers, or they're just not aware of themselves in regard to those 3 areas, there's like the next tab in Google Sheets is archetypes.
Yeah, client archetypes. So there's 4 main archetypes that we use. It's loose Larry, up and down Eddie, consistent Kim, and weapon Wendy. And essentially there's a bunch of behaviors that we've listed in there for eating, training, and also mindset. And essentially it's a bit like a menu. So these are all the behaviors that we encounter coaching people, and you'll reflect on yourself about what your training behaviors are and go, yeah, I do that regularly, or that's one that I would like to eliminate.
Right.
And so they're the key things that have contributed to your health status right now. And it's basically an awareness process for the client.
So guys, you'll receive, your trainer at the beginning of this program will share Google Sheets with you, and as part of that is this habit review. And then talk to us about, okay, once the client has done the habit review, 80-20.
Yeah, and so essentially if you've done that really well, there'll be key ones if you really think about it. I won't go into the analogy too much, but there'll be 20% of those behaviors that really drive the result. So that's the real low-hanging fruit, that if we change those things, long-term we'll have success. And so if we can understand, the client can tease out themselves, okay, so it's like overeating on the weekend or binge eating, when I'm stressed, or it might be, really low step count, poor hydration, high stress, might be the key things for them. Well, we understand then that as part of the program, they're the things that we need to actually provide structure and accountability around to help them change long-term sustainably.
And the 80-20, guys, like there's a universal principle, 20% of the things you do really produce 80% of the results. And often, typically over the years with Tribe, we always look at nutrition and we always look at training. But I'm really excited that as part of your habit review, you will review like the mindset, self-care stuff. And as part of that, I just think there's going to be lots of learnings, when it comes to stress or hydration or sleep habits, because often they're the things that really drive the result when it comes to the eating and nutrition, or the eating and training. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. They're actually my favorite things to talk about a client with, because typically like they don't have data usually to talk about that, have deep conversations with it. But when you're logging your data and finding out about yourself, essentially like that, those stress, sleep, your mindset, so both your good habits and your poor habits, they really contribute to your ability to train well and also to be compliant with your nutrition. Like they're really, really critical.
So once we've actually done the habit review, then we grab those, the key areas, the 20% of the things that are going to drive 80% of the result, and we schedule them in. Hey, so the client would then just create a schedule in regards to rocks that they really want to make sure are part of their week, part of their day. Things like training times, maybe eating, meal frequency, like timings of eating as well, bedtime, wake time, that type of thing.
Yeah, so like this is in the shed part, there's obviously the reflection bit, part which we just covered, but there's also preparation. And so actually being proactive and start going, okay, so I know that 4 meals a day works really well for me. I'm going to schedule those meal timings in, or their bedtime, wake time. So the schedule tab is a fluid tool that we use with the client throughout the phases, 1 through to 4. And so it evolves over time, but essentially at the start, we want to take care of the really big rocks that may solve some of those 80-20 problems.
What do you mean by fluid?
Fluid means it can change over time.
Right.
Yeah, I think
you.
that's the right definition for
Excellent.
fluid.
Yep, I was just checking. So essentially, guys, phase 1's all about reviewing your current habits and then creating a schedule for how you want to start the program. Also in phase 1, when we're in the shed, the coach and client will come up with an agreement. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, this is really cool. And I think this is really important to do this at the start. So the number one thing what the client agrees to is that they will just log their daily data each day. So this sounds overwhelming, but it's very, very simple to do. 60 to 90 seconds. It starts with your body weight in the morning, at the end of the day, before bed. You just log all the other cells in there to do with training, mindset, and nutrition, very simply, right? And they commit to doing that on time each day, honestly, right?
Right.
And then if they do that, the coach's side of the agreement is just to always be very non-judgmental about whatever's coming up in the data, no matter how bad it looks or how embarrassed the client might be. The coach will never ever judge them, because if we don't judge them, we can help them move forward.
That's really important, guys. Our trainers at Tribe, they do see these things every day, right?
Yeah.
And the more honest you are, the more we can help you. Okay, so phase 1 is basically setting up the program, right?
Yeah.
And once that's done, we then move into phase 2. So the name of phase 2 is the first easy drive.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us about that?
So essentially we've started now, right? So you're going to have your first easy drive really starts with your first weigh-in, okay? And you've started on your spreadsheet tab, so the daily accountability tab. And essentially there's some very, very simple instructions that we say, eat like a responsible adult. To a perceived maintenance level, or just a little bit less, right? So a very slight deficit. A really good other instruction we use here is just imagine you had to eat really consistently for 6 months, say, like very, very consistently. Show me what that first week of that 6-month eating plan would look like if you were trying to lose weight over that period.
So, yeah,
So
with the 6 months in mind, it's going to be obviously a sustainable approach.
Very sustainable. They're not going to go really low or anything like that.
So we've started the program here in phase 2. We're doing a first easy drive, albeit we're starting slowly.
Yeah.
But you haven't spoken about, our trainers aren't going to be speaking about a calorie deficit or giving it, we want you to eat this or eat these, we think you should eat 1,700 calories.
No.
Why don't we go to that?
Well, because we want to know, essentially, I want to know exactly what your patterns of behaviour are now, because if we can build off the foods and the structure that you are already doing, we have a high chance of success long term.
Yep, love that. Okay, so we're doing the first easy drive. There's a shared Google sheet between client and trainer. That's the instruction to kick it off in the first week. Eat like a responsible adult, and daily the client is tracking data on output, intake and mindset self-care. So output, yeah, how many steps, training, cardio, that type of thing. Intake, like water, nutrition score, alcohol, and then mindset self-care, sleep, stress,
Yep,
that type of thing.
And it's important in this phase, Mark, that so what we want done really, really well is just logging the data.
Yep.
Right. So it's not about like most people do get results in this phase. Their weight does tend to come down because they're just being more aware, more conscious of what they're eating. Because they're recording it, they probably do a bit better than what they normally do, which is great, which is what we want. But what the coach really wants is just wants you to log it every day, and so you understand the process. We're just about the process in phase one.
Why does the coach want to see data?
Because that will show us long-term patterns of behaviour. So you might have a certain way you eat from Monday to Thursday and a certain way you behave from Friday to Sunday, right? And after you can see that for at least a couple of weeks, you can start to make really smart decisions about where to put your energy to actually make changes.
And even a step before that, not only do you start to make smart decisions, but you start to learn about yourself, right? So guys, you do 2 or 3 weeks of tracking data. You'll look back through your Google Sheets and you look at week 1, week 2, week 3, and without even having a chat to your trainer, you're actually going to start learning about yourself, right? That's called the coaching mirror a little bit. Hey, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's really cool. And so phase 1 is actually their first look into the coaching mirror, where they do the client agreement and they commit to just being honest, and they start tracking every day. And before you know it, like they've logged a couple of weeks of data, and there's this process of actual self-correction that they go, wow, my step count on Thursday to Sunday is like half of what it normally is from Monday to Wednesday. And they start to actually just doing more steps on those days. It's really cool because they just see the data and it pops out of them. Or they might say, hydration might be really good on some days, bad on some days, and they start to fix that self-correction.
Excellent. So phase 2, that's pretty much all there is to it. Just start, log data, and don't go crazy with your nutrition. Just start eating like a responsible adult. Right?
Yeah, think long term. Think I've got to be dieting really well in a healthy way to maintenance or a little bit less for 6 months. You will naturally gravitate to a very healthy diet.
Yeah.
And then your coach can start to optimize that diet with you.
I love this because by tracking data daily, it's now not a weekly conversation, it's a daily conversation. It's an accurate conversation between client and trainer, client and coach, right? Because with personal training sessions I've done in the past, the client would come in, I'd be like, hey, how'd you go over the last 7 days? And the client would be like, yeah, pretty good. And it's just not a quality conversation because they can't remember and they probably tell me the good things only. But when you're tracking it daily, love it. Awesome.
It's really hard because I reckon most trainers are really well-intentioned. They try and help clients. But it's very hard with a client to talk about subjectively about their last 7 days because it's all about like how they felt they went, and then the coach how they felt they went. Like when you've got accurate data where it's just objective, where it's real, you can be really helpful for them.
Yep. Okay, so guys, this whole program, the 1 car, 1 driver, like how long does it go for? Like it's like a 6 to 12 week program, depending on your goal. If you've got a bigger goal, a little bit longer. Smaller goal, 2 to 3 kilos, not as long. So phase 2, really, like it's 1 to 2 weeks, then we move into phase 3, right?
Yeah, and so remember phase 2, we are getting results, and then phase 3 though, this is where it really changes. So essentially we're onto the race track.
And this is like the main duration of the whole program, phase 3.
This is the bit where it really happens. Okay, so phase 2 we were more interested in process. Phase 3 we want to be interested in process and results.
Yep.
So the analogy is, we pop your car and the driver on the racetrack, and now it's time to post lap times. Okay, so 1 lap of the track equals 1 week. What we want to do every week is get week to week progress. So average weight going down each week. On the sidelines, you've got your coach in the pits, like watching the car go around and monitoring the car for any like maybe bad stuff that's going to come out in the future to avoid a big car crash.
Yeah. So we're pretty much like, okay, we're on.
We're on.
Does this mean as soon as we go from phase 2 into phase 3, the coach says, right, calorie deficit, let's just, like what happens with nutrition when you go from phase 2 to phase 3?
This is really cool. This is a really cool thing about the program is that as in this phase 2 period, so obviously we're logging data, but you're also starting to use your food diary and hopefully getting more accurate at that. essentially, once we're in phase 3, we really need to know what calories you're doing each day so the coach can actually help you. And so your food diary becomes really, really important in phase 3.
Food diary meaning like MyFitnessPal?
MyFitnessPal, yeah. So
as an example?
As an example. And essentially, and then your coach can help you start to pull levers. The big levers obviously are output, so all the things that are contributing to calorie burn, and obviously intake, right? And so that's a client-coach sort of conversation each week about, like when you were on it last time, we only dropped your calories a little bit, but focused on more of your output, and that got you the result.
Yeah, and I liked when you were dropping my calories. Well, you were dropping them from a point of where I was in phase 2, which was I was just eating maintenance to kick it all off, right? And then as soon as we went into phase 3, okay, so that's all about fat loss. Well, how do you get fat loss? Well, you do have to evoke a caloric deficit. You either get that by increasing your energy expenditure through more steps or more training, or bring your food down a bit. But just what I loved about the program is, like, I was in phase 3. You said, do you want to increase your training? I'm like, nah, my training's fine. And you're like, okay, well, we need to pull some food out a little bit. And you didn't go into the whole talking about calories, or because I had my food diary there, you were like, just take out the 2 potatoes from meal number 4.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, it was just super easy.
Super easy, yeah.
You know?
It's actually pretty basic, like nutrition for most people. Like, decide number of meals per day that you're going to eat. Commit to actually not eating outside of those meal times. And if you're most people eat pretty similarly, like throughout the week. And so then it's really, if you're very consistent, it's really easy to coach someone. Like if we need to pull food, it's very simple.
I reckon the best part of the program, to be honest with you, is when you're in this phase 3 and we are tracking data on a daily basis. Yeah, we're tracking output, steps, weight training, cardio. We're tracking intake, nutrition, of course. But we're also tracking the whole self-care thing, like sleep and stress, just to name 2. And you're a big believer, and I know you're educating our trainers at Tribe about this. It's like, that stuff, the sleep and the stress, the mindset, self-care, that drives the behavior around eating and training. But the big, like, blinding flash of the obvious is, well, if you don't know that you're stressed, and if you don't know that you're not drinking enough water, you don't know to even work on those things. Everyone still goes straight to, what can I do with my eating? What can I do with my training? But it's like, there's a better conversation, hey?
There's a smarter way to do it. It's just like, if you've struggled with this sort of stuff for 10, 20, 30 years, it's just worth having a look at the stuff that drives compliance. And that is, it is mindset, and it is stress, and it is sleep, and it is hydration. Those things drive compliance. Like nutritional fat loss is a game of just whoever makes the most good decisions wins, right? And so if you're in a relaxed, calm state, or just a more relaxed, calm state, and you're hydrated and you're sleeping a bit better, your ability to make better decisions goes up. And so it's like, this is the difference about this program. We're trying to fix people long term.
Love it.
And so having a look under the hood in those areas is super, super important.
It's interesting, you know how we say we're trying to fix people long term, and I started this off by saying, oh, we're all about sustainable results. I reckon the people watching should be like, whatever. But this is how we do it, right? Talk about the fact that you've got daily data, right? And you're predicting a car crash. And if we can predict the car crash, what's a car crash, and what do you do to avoid it?
Yeah, I'm just going to read this out. So every week, so there's an extra, on a Sunday, there's an extra set of subjective measures that we take. These are lead measures. So these are the predictors of the car crash. Super important for the coach to receive these every week. So we measure hunger, cravings, mood, motivation, and training intensity.
So say them slowly again.
Hunger, score of 1 to 10. Cravings, mood, motivation, training intensity. Now imagine on the car, you got those dials like oil pressure, tire pressure, all the gauges, right? And if they're like all red lining, something bad is going to happen to the car soon. Well, this is like those gauges, right? If those scores, for instance, like your hunger and craving scores are very high, really hungry, want food outside of your meals, maybe your motivation's gone down a bit, and maybe your mood's a bit low, and you've been training really hard, I predict a massive crash coming up. And so the coach now uses this information to actually lead the client, maybe to pull back a bit on training intensity, give them a little bit more food for a few days, being
Get
consistent
some more sleep, maybe.
is the most important thing. Consistency is how you win long term. So avoiding those big crashes is the most critical thing in phase 3.
So good. So guys, can you see how this program, One Car, One Driver, is different? And a big part of it is the shared Google Sheets between trainer and client. And a big part of the Google Sheets is tracking data on a daily basis so that the coach and trainer, or the client can learn a lot about themselves, but the coach can guide, predict car crashes. Car crashes being, by the way, is like, what's a car crash like in these terms?
Yeah, I think most people have experienced this where you diet really hard for like 3 weeks, say,
Yep.
and then going really well, really happy with the results, in a really good mind frame, super positive, and then you eat a bit of something bad, and then that turns into 3 days just off, off the wagon. And typically in those 3 weeks, in 3 days, you can undo 3 weeks worth of work, and that leads this up and down eating, dieting thing, which is no one's ever won playing that game. So fixing that problem is about actually maybe not dieting as hard for your level and changing your training a little bit. So there's a lot of coaching around it, but it's if we go back to what we're trying to do, long-term sustainable results.
So phase 1 is you come in and you analyse your habits, right? And then you build a schedule and you set your goals. Phase 2, first easy drive. Let's just kick off with 1 or 2 weeks, start tracking data and eat like a responsible adult. Nothing too hardcore with nutrition to kick it all off. Phase 3, is we're on the racetrack. We're going. And that means, we're dialing in, we're tracking our data daily. We want a result. Yeah. Phase 2 is about process, just get started. Phase 3, result, let's go. You're trying to predict a car crash and avoid it. Excellent. And then phase 3, but if we spend a good, 6, 8, 10 weeks in phase 3, we'll get the result that their client is after.
100%.
And then at that point,
we need to maintain it.
Which is phase 4, which is bringing down the revs, we call it. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so essentially this is when you've got your results and we're coming off the racetrack, and now we need to learn how to maintain those results. And so collecting data is still really, really important, but it's not as intense because you want to rest the client a little bit as well. So there's a couple of key things that happen in this phase is, obviously we need to give them more food. We've been in a caloric deficit, so you haven't been eating the amount that you need to meet your needs each day. So we need to bring you back up to maintenance or a little bit above.
Yep.
But we also need to learn how to integrate your new habits into your lifestyle outside of the racetrack.
Yep.
So essentially, like you may have omitted alcohol for 8 weeks, so.
Omitted. Yep. Like gotten rid of.
Gotten rid of it, and then so now you want to start going back into a normal lifestyle. Well, that's a part of your life, which is cool. So maybe like tracking particular things around that is really, really important in this phase, if that makes sense. So essentially phase 4, bring down the revs with client is being monitored at a lower level at a maintenance level so they can maintain their results long term.
Yeah. Kind of having a bit of an active rest.
Yeah, 100%.
Phase
Well,
4.
it depends. Like some clients will move to a bigger goal or something as well, something outside of body composition. Maybe they start running or doing something else, and so that there's accountability in other areas as well. But some who just want to maintain their results, definitely relaxing training a little bit because we don't need to be in a deficit. Right?
Yeah. The thing I love about phase 4, guys, is yes, you're still going to track some stuff on a daily basis, but it might not be as many inputs of daily data. You might just pick body weight, meal timings, and sleep. But when we do when people have done challenges in the past, they can't like wait to get to the end of the 4 weeks, and it's like, and then it's like starting to eat the foods that they were trying to avoid for the last 4 weeks. But the big problem with a challenge finishing is there's no tracking, there's no accountability generally.
Yeah.
It's just like, I've finished and let's enjoy our life. But now this phase 4, bring down the revs as part of this whole program is, okay, we're going to bring down the revs. We might ease off training a bit. We might give you a bit more food, but we can't. Hey, we want to maintain these habits. Let's track some stuff.
You've just fought to, like, I'm 45, and if this is the first time me being on this process, I would have had like 30 years of conditioning, right? And I've just made all these beautiful changes, new habits. We want these changes to be long term. So essentially, phase 4 is helping you maintain those and checking in. If it is going off track for you somewhere, that's a really good, another conversation point for you and your coach.
And if someone's got a goal of, say, 10 kilos or more, this is why the program is sustainable, because let's say they're in phase 3 and they've lost 6 kilos. They haven't lost their 10. We're still going to put them into phase 4, even though they haven't achieved their full goal, because we're thinking long-term sustainable results. Got to put them into phase 4, got to bring the revs down, got to calm the farm a little bit. And then if they've still got more weight to lose, after they've been in phase 4 for 2 to 4 weeks, they can then just go back through phase 1, 2, 3 and get their result, yeah?
Yeah, and it's actually really cool when clients do that because they get a bit better at it every time.
Yep.
And so, essentially they get dialed in and they understand the process and they actually learn a bit, you learn a lot about yourself in phase 4, about what actually key habits are really, really critical to maintain because they're the ones that they slip on. So when they come back, it's really cool that the client's actually really directive to the coach. You go, this is what I need to work on. This is what I want my training to be, blah, blah, blah. It's really great.
And when it's coming from the client, it's gold, right?
It's gold.
They're learning more about themselves. Adherence is much higher.
Yeah.
So depending on the size of the goal for weight loss, you might go through the whole program 2, maybe 3 times, meaning the whole program. Phase 1, 2, 3, 4, that's one.
Yeah.
And think to yourself, guys, 10 weeks-ish, right? So what I want to say is there's 2 types of people. Say that you've got 20 kilos to lose, you might go through it a couple of times. But the ones who've got like 2 to 5 kilos, they might just go through phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and they're done. At that point, I'd like to recommend, get into group personal training. Graduate away from the one-on-one personal training program and get into the group PT. That's like we want the flow to be like, do your one-on-one PT, do the one car, one driver program, understand, learn, get really good at all this sort of stuff, and then boom, jump into group personal training, which by the way, we really want to remind people of. It's group PTs for like able bodies. So if you've got an injury, come and talk to us. We'll align you with our physiotherapist and get a really good gym floor program for you to rehabilitate you. Then you can get pushed back into the whole group personal training. So I've just got a couple of questions to finish off.
Yeah.
We've pretty much discussed phase 1, 2, 3, 4. Have we missed anything, do you think?
I don't think so.
Excellent. So why do you reckon we need to move to the 45-minute session?
Well, as we've just discussed, there's a lot to cover when coaching someone really well. And so first and foremost, like being able to actually spend time with them and have conversations about the critical things about their data in the session is really important. And that's just not achievable in 30 minutes. And secondly, I think this is probably even more primary to the one I just mentioned then, it's actually training them better. So there's more effective sets. So even though there's an extra cost going from 30 to 45 minutes, the amount of minutes you're paying for, I think the value in actual training efficiency and conditioning that you get from that, it will far exceed the value that you're paying for.
So guys, the 30-minute PT session, currently $65. You can still continue doing that if you like. We're now recommending moving toward the 45-minute PT session, $99, because of everything we've spoken about today.
Yep.
Can the trainer, last question, can the client, I should say, expect anything outside of the personal training session?
Yeah, 100%. And this is the structure we're moving towards with 45-minute sessions is the coaches obviously got lots of cool data for the clients. What we're going to do with each of the clients is check them in outside of their PT session once per week. So what is that? Okay, so at a minimum, they'll be looking at their program. Obviously, either
They meaning the trainer?
The trainer,
Yep.
yeah. So having a detailed review, giving you tips either via text message, screenshot, that sort of thing, or if they're on the racetrack, we do a video review.
Yep.
So essentially it's a service called Loom. They'll review your data. You'll be able to see their face.
They being the trainer, not Loom.
Sorry.
The trainer's Loom.
Yeah.
I'm just
the
sorry.
trainer, sorry,
Yep.
will review your data and give you critical feedback about how you're going outside of your session. So I think that's really smart
cool.
because if you're doing one session a week, 7 days is a long time to not hear from your trainer.
Yeah.
And just having that check-in in between your session where you actually get guided on how you should be performing in those 7 days, it's really powerful.
So there you go, guys. The one car, one driver program. It's worth having a close look at. Thanks, Chapo.
Thanks, mate. Super
Cheers.
excited.